prevention education with the Student Wellness Office. And we're super excited to have y'all here with us today to talk a little bit about media literacy and how that connects to our well-being, especially now that we're all, listening to recommendations from scientists, CDC officials, and staying inside as much as possible. And maybe we're consuming a little bit more media.
Exactly. And so what we're going to do is talk about how to become more media literate, especially in this time, as mentioned by Linos. And so we'll start by just a couple of introductions. So folks, as you are interested and able or comfortable, if you could please state your name, share your pronouns, and share with us a recent meme or video that really made you LOL. And I feel like me personally, I can go ahead and start. Again, my name is Caress Roach. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I feel like I'm always looking at media that cracks me up, specifically on Twitter. And it's just nothing that, I just keep scrolling. But I think the funniest thing I've seen today is just a pot. It was like a pot cooking, and it was like black. It looks like tar. And somebody was like, exactly that. What do you cook up? Are you cooking road? And I just thought that was really funny. So
that's a good one, Caress. I can share. So again, my name is Vivian Linos. The pronouns I use are she, her. I've been watching a lot of cat and dog videos recently as somebody that has a few of those animals myself. It's been kind of funny to see how all the animals are reacting to people being at home more, their owners being at home more. It's really cute. So that's what's been making me LOL. If others feel comfortable sharing and wanting to introduce themselves, go ahead.
Hey y'all, this is Veronica. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And a video that made me laugh out loud so hard was, I guess it was over Easter weekend. There was this video where somebody had like the uncle of the family dressed up as the Easter bunny, but he dressed up in this like busted looking Easter bunny costume. It looked like he should be like a horror movie rabbit. And so you see these little kids that are on the video in their Easter costumes, and they're like, oh, look, it's the Easter bunny. And the kids are like, that's not the Easter bunny. And then they take off screaming around the house like there's like a complete chaos ensues with this busted Easter bunny. I will send it to those who are interested. I keep watching it and cracking up. It's so good.
Yes, please share. Any excuse to laugh, I think, is welcome these days.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Veronica. Anyone else like to share? If not, that's okay. We'll just keep it moving. Okay. Well, thank you, Veronica and Linos. And I know that everyone else has lots of memes, I'm sure, whether it's on your Facebook, Twitter for me, potential family members, maybe if you have like a group text message chat or something like that. So it's really important for us to keep in mind that any kind of media or message or idea that's communicated to us can be considered a type of media. So it's really funny that some of them make us laugh, even when it's maybe drawing fear in others. So thank you. So just to kind of give you all an idea of what's happening this week, this is last week of classes, so congratulations for making it this far. And we have an LDOC Spirit Week going on right now. So if you're able, feel free to participate with us online by using the hashtag UNCLDOC2020 to show us your spirit throughout this week. And so today is Wednesday, and it looks like it's pets in your PJs. So if you have some pets and if you have some PJs, share it with us online so that we can see your spirit, since we are socially distancing right now, or physically distancing, but still being social. So yes, make sure that you tune into all of those awesome events this week. So to get into what media literacy is, kind of like as we already mentioned, we get inundated with lots of messages, lots of visuals, symbols, ideas, communication that directly impacts us. Whether it's our understandings or our feelings. And so what is it mean to be media literate? And so according to the Media Literacy Project, it's the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media, which also takes into account history, culture, power, and privilege, just because we all don't live in a vacuum, right? So it's really important to consider where are all of these coming from? And so as you can see the little icons, there's different medias in there, which includes like printed media, it includes radio, anything that's written. It could be an image with words on it. It could be your family members. We get lots of messages. And so the point here is to be as critical thinking as possible. And so if you do have some media literacy skills, the hopes is that you are more inclined to pick up the messages, or like pick up the type of persuasion that's happening, whether it's an advertisement to get you to buy something, which was important to understand and know. Let's see. And it also allows us to be critical consumers. So we're not just picking up information and allowing it to harm us, basically. And so one way to help you kind of conceptualize or really understand how to be media literate is to maybe think of it in relation to this Empirical Ladder, which was created by Paulo Freire. And it breaks it down into 4 steps in terms of how to access different parts of your brain. So the first part is to be aware. And so this is when it comes to any media, if you're able to observe or take observations, like what is really happening right here? Or what am I really looking at? I'm looking at a television and I'm looking at an advertisement, and this is what's going on. So what observations can you take from whatever media that you're coming into contact with, in addition to any personal experiences or connections or potential insights that maybe you wouldn't have known before. And this also includes seeking more information to kind of become more aware and informed of your awareness. So maybe it means going to Google like, I didn't know that, so let me go and figure it out. Or it could mean asking someone, but basically the idea here is that once you're aware, try to get as much awareness as possible for what's happening for that media that you're consuming. And then next, you would analyze. And so this is kind of like the how. So try to figure out, how did this media come to fruition? And so this is kind of to increase the critical process of inquiry, to continue exploring and discovering. So again, going to Google or going to another trusted, credible source of information, which is a part of what media literacy is really important. So you have to analyze what's happening once you become aware. And then next, you apply it to yourself. So what does this actually mean for me? And what does it mean for others? So I became aware, I've analyzed and took the messages from it. And so now I need to apply it for my own self. And this is where we see a lot of biases, implicit biases come up, or just general lived experiences. And this is where a lot of the values and the decision-making component comes for whatever media that you're ingesting. And so that leads to the 4th part, which is the action. And so once you formulate some kind of action or idea based off of going through this ladder, so you started with the awareness, the analysis, and the reflection, and so the action is whatever happens after that. So maybe it's you actually realizing, this is a change in I should change my behavior, or maybe my attitudes change, or maybe I'm not going to do anything at all. I'm not going to let it impact me or affect me. That too is an action. And I feel like the action step is really most important, especially as it relates to creating your own media for others to consume, because it's really important to, like the definition states, to really take into consideration what the context is, right? Like, what is the history behind this? What's really going on, and how does it impact others? And so keeping this in mind, we have a couple of examples that we're going to go through. And so, let's see, let me go to
And I just want to offer here too, Caress, while you're moving us forward, that this is really a process, right? This is a framework for understanding and interpreting media and what it means for you in your life. But this is not like a perfect equation, right? And this is going to take a lot of practice, right? So if you are novice to media literacy and you're just starting out, having that awareness, like feeling that gut feeling in your stomach that, this advertisement seems weird. You know, it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. That's an awesome first start. So just don't get discouraged if you don't feel like you can go through all of these steps on your first try. It's really a practice because like Chris said, we're inundated with so much media all the time that we're consuming. I mean, you watch a YouTube video and there's like 3 ads in there, right? So you're watching the video, which has messages, and then you're watching those 3 ads that also have messages. So just be kind to yourself, give yourself a little bit of grace, and just continue to practice these skills like any skill you would, like a muscle. Just continue to exercise it.
Great point, because yes, it happens all the time, and it's because we're not really aware that it doesn't come natural. So just like what you were saying, since you came out of the room, yeah, you've been getting messages all left and right. And so yes, this will take some time. It is a process, and so a good way to help understand this process is to just continually ask yourself questions, right? I like to consider myself a scientist, observing what's going on, taking certain meanings and making sure I think of it in different ways or perspectives other than myself. And so I have some general questions here that we're going to be asking ourselves as we look through the other examples. But even right now, like, has anyone seen this meme to the left with the child saying like, so you're telling me people drive to the gym to walk on the treadmill? Interesting, you know? So I wonder who created this media. That would be a really good first question to ask yourself. And then what influence do they have? Because there's lots of implications, I feel like, with this image, but it has some truth to it, right? Especially being from my perspective. I know a lot of people that drive to the gym just to walk on the treadmill. And so I feel like it's pretty funny. There's some comical relief in here. But then it leads to ask the second question, why did they make this media, or what messages are they trying to send here, right? Because, I mean, looking at it, it doesn't look like this is in America, or maybe it does. The Black child looks like he is very skeptical, wondering what this woman is talking about. The woman looks very kind. Looks like she's caring, or at least looking at the guy, you know, the little child. So again, what messages are they trying to send with this meme? Another question is, what techniques are being used to make this message credible or believable? And are there any details left out, and why? I feel like when it comes to that question, a lot of that has to do with advertisements or consumerism in terms of products, and trying to get us motivated to feel like we need something and to buy it. So it would be good, like, for what this is asking, what techniques are being used. I feel like lots of advertisements use a lot of psychological techniques to motivate us to, yes, want to be driven to buy. And so it's really important to keep that question in mind. And then that leads me to the last question about, how did the message make you feel? Kind of like what Vivian was saying, like, what is that gut visceral reaction? Does it make you feel skeptical or some kind of way in terms of, no, something's not right? Or maybe it makes you extremely happy. Like, I think it's very funny that that person pulled a prank, you know? And so it's really important to take those feelings and then start thinking about, how has it impacted me in this moment, let alone my wellness. And then what is it going to lead me to do? Or how does this message potentially make other people feel? Because we all have our individual identities and lived experiences that could be vastly different. I mean, we really don't want to harm others, which is the point of.
Yeah, and one thing, Chris, that I think is really interesting and unique about memes in particular, and I can mention that a little bit while folks are maybe thinking through these questions we have on the screen, and maybe feeling like if they're interested and comfortable sharing some of their initial reactions to this meme. So take some time to do that while I'm talking through this interesting point. But memes are really cool because it's kind of 2 forms of media in one, right? Because the picture originally was separate from like this text or this meaning that somebody is putting on it, right? And so if you have this picture that's separate, that somebody took, or that, you know, was captured somewhere for some documentary series or whatever, and then you have folks looking at that picture, putting meaning and assumption and some sort of narrative onto that picture, and then transitioning it into a meme, right? So it's kind of interesting because it's 2 things like put on each other. And there's a lot of digging to like kind of uncover, what is the meme trying to say, but then what was the original purpose of the picture? and how is that contributing to this new narrative that's being applied to it in the context of a meme. So I just think memes are so fascinating because they're really like a lot of overlapping messages and ideas that is fun, you know, for folks like us that are interested in media literacy to kind of unpack and understand.
Mm-hmm. Which is really important because I feel like I've seen this meme at least 20 times with different messages, and each time I cackle. Just depending on, like the message that's applied to it. But I'm sure wherever this came from, that was not its intended purpose. Sarah's first reaction was humor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to our first example. This is a song. Song is a form of media, and we know songs are really good at deriving emotional feelings, and also very strong in certain cultures in terms of telling stories and passing on traditions and strategies to survive. And so it's really interesting that Tootsie Slide, this is #1 on a Billboard, like
100?
worldwide songs, top songs.
It is.
And so I just took an excerpt of it and for us to ask those questions to. So in case you haven't heard it, feel free to, go take a listen after this, but it really is, this is just the first excerpt. So he says, "That's just how I think. It's either you or me. This life got too deep for you, baby. 2 or 3 of us about to creep where they stayin'. Black leather gloves, no sequins, buckles on the jacket. It's Alex, ooh, shit, whoa. Nike crossbody, got a piece in it, got a dance, but it's really on some street shit. So I'm gonna show you how to get it." And then he talks about doing his left foot up or right foot slide, and everybody, do slide.
Yeah.
And so what are some first reactions to this? Or if you have heard the song, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, and remember that empirical ladder, and Sarah put it in the chat for us. The awareness, the analysis, the reflection, and then that action.
Well, my first reaction as you all are listening, maybe thinking about it, even when it comes to these lyrics, when I first heard it, it was pretty, I really like the jovial nature to it. It's kind of lighthearted, has like some R&B, hip hop vibes. So it has like a good bass that I like. And he was dancing around. I feel like right now, especially with TikTok and all these other viral dance moves, is really good timing. So I think my first reaction was like, okay, Drake, and his house is gorgeous. I think he finally shows his house
In the music video?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the song in and of itself is media, and then the music video is kind of another layer of that,
Mm-hmm. And this is an excerpt from it. You can see him with the face mask. He's socially distancing. He has on all black and camo. And so I know Fitzgerald had shared that her first reaction was humor.
Yeah, and then
impacts.
And then Alicia shared in the group,
Mm-hmm.
that she didn't know that this song was associated with the dance and didn't really notice that these lyrics were actually insinuating violence, right?
Oh, yes, and that's right. He talks about his Nike crossbody bag, having a piece in it. So that sounds pretty violent to me. And he has on black leather gloves, no sequins. So I guess it's not for show. I love a good sequins glove. But it's really interesting that it really takes us to stop and pick apart all of these layers and all of these lyrics to generate a meaning. And this meaning is pretty violent. Apparently life got too deep for somebody, so 2 or 3 of them's about to creep where they're staying, and to utilize the black leather gloves and the buckles on the jacket and the piece in their Nike crossbody. And as Charlotte had added that it seems to be for pure entertainment. However, it really is about context. And if you're not a Drake fan or listen to R&B, you wouldn't recognize it, which is fair. So now we're talking about viewership, right? Like, who is he really appealing to, or who is he trying to appeal to, and for what?
Yeah, and how does he mask and normalize the violent lyrics with like not just a catchy tune, but also with a dance that goes along with it, right? Which a dance seems very innocent and fun and something we can all get behind, but really there's some violence in there too.
Mhm. Sarah had offered that without certain cultural concepts, probably wouldn't have picked up on these messages, which is really important to consider because culture is really a huge part of media literacy. Because depending on the culture you come from, it might either go right over your head or it could really hit you deep. And so that's a really good point. As anyone knows how to do the slide, just put your hand up. Anyone? Sissy slide? Okay. All right, you should try to listen to some more of the song because I feel like it's still, yeah, it gets more violent as well. But I think it's also a good point that Charlotte pointed out that it is for pure entertainment, which is a part of media literacy, an important part to be able to tell the difference, like what's exaggerated versus what's real. So not to kind of intertwine the two, because I mean, entertainment is entertainment.
Yeah, and so another point here is when we're talking about media literacy, we're not necessarily trying to dictate what kind of media you consume, right? Because sometimes we can't help what media we consume because it's just there around us, or sometimes we like the beat and we like the dance and it's fun. It's something to take our minds off of what's going on right now. And that's okay, but it's important for us to also understand what messages this is sending and how that's impacting our behavior, other people's behaviors, right? So holding those two truths together, like, hey, I like this song, it's a good beat, but I also am aware of the messages it's sending me and how that can potentially be harmful for folks. And that's kind of a hard balance, but that's kind of what we're hoping to accomplish with flexing and practicing these media literacy skills.
Mm-hmm. And the continued process. And yeah, that's why it takes a lot. And it also takes self-reflection because I'm at a point where it's like, well, do I really believe Drake is out here Tootsie sliding and breaking into people's houses when his house looks like that? Like, no. And so it's a point, it's a threshold. Am I going to then create a boundary or choose to decide not to consume this type of media? All right, so let's go to the next example unless anyone else have things to offer. All right. Next is just this distracted boyfriend meme. And so oftentimes we see like words either on the chest of the woman and the man that's looking back and the, I guess the assumed girlfriend or the persons that he's with looking back. And so again, I guess going back to the questions, what is this meme trying to tell you? Or what messages do you get from it? Or what is it supporting in terms of what we're seeing?
Yeah, even think about like the name of the meme, distracted boyfriend. Like, what is that saying and what context and narrative does that provide us to kind of put onto this image to understand what it means and what it's saying?
Mm-hmm. What do y'all think? I think just looking back at it, yeah. I felt the emotions or the feelings I get is reverting back to personal times where I've had literally a distracted boyfriend before. So I feel like it's a little triggering in that sense, but it's very relatable. So yeah.
Yeah, and to me, it just normalizes the narrative that men are have wandering eyes, and that that's just to be expected, and that women shouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. What about anything cultural are you all taking from here? Or have you seen this meme before? Because I feel like a part of media and memes themselves to work is that people have to see them and it has to be kind of duplicated and replicated.
I also kind of wonder, where did this picture originally come from? It kind of looks like a stock photo or something, right? Like one of those pictures you have in like picture frames that you buy from the...
Mm-hmm. It's very professional, yeah.
Yeah, it's professional.
A good lens.
And even how like the woman that's closest to us, her face is a little bit blurred. I think that's kind of interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that mean?
On those,
that?
right, yeah. Like the focus definitely ain't on her, though his focus is.
Mm-hmm. And then his girlfriend or his partner or person next to him, her focus is on him, right? So it's kind of interesting where everyone's looking.
Mm-hmm. Even looking at his facial expressions, like what is he really thinking here?
Yeah, exactly. Like Charlotte said, normalizes cheating and normalizes monogamy.
Right.
Oh, that's a good one.
Some, not all. That's a good one.
I've seen this before with language making the partner seem crazy or jealous. Absolutely. So picking up on this narrative of like crazy ex-girlfriend or super jealous ex-girlfriend, that ball and chain or whipped kind of narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Veronica, it's interesting how she's still holding his hand.
Yeah.
What kind of messages does that send us? Even if you have a partner has wandering eyes, it's just still your responsibility to stay committed to that person, or just expect that's a normal part of their behavior because that's just what men do.
Mm-hmm.
And the two females look similar. Yeah, that's true. They do look very similar.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm wondering what's happening after this.
Yeah.
Like after this one moment in time, like what did she do, or what did he do, or the person do that's walking away?
Yeah, and that's another cool thing about like media that's still frame, like that's photography, because it only gives us a small segment of the narrative and allows our brains and our imagination to kind of put our own pieces onto it and like imagine and infer and assume what happens after this, right? That's also part of the message.
It is.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
All right. Let me get one more example. And this is a Bud Light. Charlotte offered more context. What if either partner has been unfaithful and or either have trust issues? Yeah, because I can definitely see why one would think they would be unfaithful looking back like that. Or just, trust issues. She clearly is not happy. The one all the way to the right. Maybe to the point where, he's done it before. Maybe that's why she's still holding his hand. But it's a lot of maybes going on here, right? Like there's not enough information. And I feel like that's the point, the important part in terms of being literate is this, like knowing that there's only so much given to us. And the rest is for us to either judge or not judge.
Well, yeah, and I think there's some interesting things coming into the chat here, Caress. Charlotte said more context. What if either partner has been unfaithful or has trust issues like you were mentioning? Yeah, that's because that's a really real thing, right? That comes up in a lot of relationships. Trust and honesty are things that take time to build up and to secure and to resecure. And so that's a very normal part of some relationships. And in this context, I mean, I've never seen this meme presented as something that's not funny, right? Like most of the time when I see this meme and the text around it, it's like supposed to be something really funny. And so even thinking about how does it trivialize these very like real things that come up in people's relationships and just makes it feel like, oh, that's not a big deal. You shouldn't worry about that, or you shouldn't be so uptight about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Veronica is saying that she's curious if he's whistling or just making a face. And that's an awesome point.
Yeah,
I think he might be
whistling.
whistling.
Like he could be whistling. I never even realized that. Look at that. As many times as I've seen this, I haven't really realized that he's whistling potentially. Yeah, and squinting his eyes. Ugh.
Yeah, and I think Charlotte, again, yeah, right. It's kind of funny to interpret his face, all their faces really, because the woman in the front is totally just unassuming, has no idea what's happening, right? So she's being acted upon by that guy with his gaze, and then the other woman reacting to what he's doing. So it's interesting. He's kind of the center of this, and he's the one that has like more of the agency, whereas everyone else is more passive, just reacting to what he's doing or not reacting. And then Charlotte makes another good point in the chat that lack of context causes a lot of misinterpretations. And I think that's why media literacy is even more important, because we're left with these kind of like hanging messages that we are responsible for interpreting. And, media has done a really good job of giving us a script and showing us what we should think. And so that's where the hard work comes in. about deconstructing those messages and trying to understand, yeah, this is probably what they want me to think, but does that benefit me? Does that harm me? Does that harm other people? What does that mean if I believe this and I perpetuate this? So good points, definitely. Keep them coming in the chat.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on to the next one. So this is a Bud Light bottle that had a message on it that reads, perfect beer for removing quote unquote no from your vocabulary for the nay. Hashtag, what does it say? Up for whatever. Oh.
Yeah, for whatever.
Okay. And this is the perfect beer for whatever happens. All right. So what are we feeling? What are some of the messages you're getting? What is this? I mean, this is a beer bottle, but is it advertising or is it, I don't know, labeling? And thinking back to that empirical ladder.
What's your like gut reaction to this?
Yeah. Hashtag rape culture, right? Because if you have to remove no from anyone's vocabulary, that doesn't sound like enthusiasm for anything, or even choice. Like you're removing the power of choice from. It says yours, so that's like my vocabulary. Wow, I don't even drink at night.
Yeah, and you know, just to affirm for people, this was a real thing that was actually printed on Bud Light, and I want to say it was like in the early 2010s, like maybe 2011 or 12. So it was decently recent. Yeah, and Veronica says in the chat that they got major backlash from this and ended up removing this, stopping the production, apologizing. And that was from a lot of pushback they received on social media, like on Twitter, and other places where folks just felt like this was inappropriate. And when we come back to that idea of context, when we think about alcohol tends to be a factor in a lot of problematic, harmful occurrences. So we can think about sexual assault, we can think about hazing, right? And so just having sensitivity around knowing that alcohol is a factor in a lot of instances of harm, you know, this adds to the problematic nature of this, right? When you put a little bit more context in there.
Mm-hmm. And just like Charlotte is saying, it encourages so many wrong things, quote unquote, in regards to communication and what that means for consent, for bar culture. Veronica's, like you said, mentioned that they did get major backlash, which I think demonstrates the power of like social consciousness, knowing that is completely inappropriate. And so people were saying something about it, kind of, again, getting back to that empirical ladder, when they must have been aware, they analyzed, they did some analysis, they reflected, and then their action was to actually say something to them and tell them to get it off the shelf because of the messaging. So there's definitely power in numbers, and power in advocating for these media systems to correct themselves. Charlotte also offered how we interact with each other, especially when consuming alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that whatever seems to be encouraging heavy drinking. Sarah mentioned, and the use of the hashtag shows the intent to make this a trend and get attraction. Wow, yeah, that's true. Hashtag up for whatever. Yeah. But it's interesting they didn't like tie in their own brand into the up for what, like into the actual hashtag. So even if we were to click it, it could have been lots of stuff there. I don't know if it would have been Bud Light, but probably would have been more things about, removing no from your vocabulary, maybe some other messaging around taking away autonomy and agency, folks.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because that's where, this messaging moves past just this one product, right? Like you're saying, Caress, they don't have up for whatever Bud Light in the hashtag. So when people are retweeting this or posting this hashtag, they're pulling in so many other different things, and they're applying the same logic, the same reasoning, removing no from your vocabulary, up for whatever, don't be a prude, have fun with us. They're applying that to so many other different contexts as well. So it's interesting how that messaging can spread from this one, product to be applied to lots of other different things, and how that can be even more problematic depending on what other application we use. So that's an interesting point there with the hashtag.
Okay, I feel like that's all the examples. Maybe you can go into just some general questions. And so if you all are interested in just talking freely, maybe unmuting your mic to offer your thoughts, or you can continue with the chat as well. But I'm just wondering, does consuming bad TV make you a bad person? I think we kind of talked about that, but what do y'all think? Even like, what is bad? Put it in quotes, because that's subjective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would say it's as black and white as it makes you bad, but when you consume things that aren't helpful, you have somehow are taking that in and you're accepting it. And so it can numb you to seeing other things later that are harmful. And then all of a sudden, behavior that prior to maybe consuming all of this media was a concern for you or caused you to pause, that happens less and less and less. And then it moves out of the media into real life. Now, when I see these things happening in real life, I'm not as charged or concerned because I've consumed this type of violence or this type of language so much that it doesn't cause me to even think about it when I hear it out or I see people maybe acting in a way that is counter to what is helpful to us as individuals or as a community.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Basically normalizing or desensitizing us from things that, yeah, even Alicia agrees to. It normalizes it for you. Mm-hmm. The badness, quote unquote, especially things that I think it was important to say, like that doesn't really do harm to me per se, but maybe it's harming others. So does that make me a bad person too? Well, maybe if I'm taking it beyond just what I'm watching or consuming and actually, acting it out. Which a lot of people do. We know we do. A lot of people do, especially folks who don't have their frontal or their brains developed like the younger crowds. Any other thoughts around that? Okay. Well, how does media and current events kind of reinforce harm? I know that Charlotte kind of mentioned it in her response to the first question in terms of how it desensitizes us. Are there any other ways that media or even current events reinforces it? Sarah's thinking about political media with this question in terms of what, politics? Or current events in terms of politics? Okay, so current events and how media can shape the narrative in terms of what we're believing to be true or not true, which I think is a very good point. Like I'm thinking about all these COVID-19 deaths and the numbers that are actually being reported versus how many deaths there actually are, which is important to consider. Thinking of the recent COVID-19 protests, Veronica is saying, and the talking points used on protests and protest signs. Very distinct messages, very little context, but really does impact our behaviors for voting, potentially.
Absolutely. And if you do have a little bit of, like you question how strong media has of a grip of like creating narratives, I encourage y'all to check out different news sources or different channels just to kind of get an idea of how the same information is presented in completely different ways. right? And that's sold to us. So it even moves past like what's fact and what's not fact, or what's accurate and what's not accurate, to how am I supposed to perceive this information, right? Like, how am I supposed to interpret this? And media plays a really large role in helping us interpret things. So it's interesting. If you're, an avid MSNBC watcher, check out CNN or Fox News or NPR, like check out the different sources and kind of see how they frame even the same issue in completely different ways. It's interesting.
I think it's a high level of sensationalism across media, because it's a business first. Advertising, the news, this is how these bills get paid for these folks, and the more people that consume it and watch it, the more money they make. And so making it seem exciting than it is, making it seem more critical than it is, helping or causing folks to feel anxious about it. Like, I want to tune in and find out more. Now I need to go somewhere and look this up. It really pushes people to make decisions that they probably wouldn't have made had they just, read this somewhere, or someone said it in a different tone of voice, versus they were, yelling into the TV about what was being said or what was actually happening.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And how media and news in particular, I think the last few years since the 2016 election, has become a form of entertainment for people, right? And so they really capitalize on the drama and the division and all that stuff because it produces entertainment, right? And that's an interesting thing for news outlets to start to pursue, right? Because we expect that from reality television and from Hollywood. But it's interesting when the news tries to make things, more of an entertainment format than just like a here are the facts.
Or when the news plus entertainment plus politics come into one, let's say like a president or like a current president. It's interesting because that literally is all of that. It's all these messages entwined to where we think it's all one. There's a question about what the plethora of media news options, how do I filter through what is fact and what is narrative? I know you were just speaking to that, Linos,
That's
about trying out the different news.
But I know there's a lot of dedicated journalists that do fact checking. I'm thinking of this one guy, but I can't remember his name right now. But if you just Google some like fact checking journalists, nowadays there's people that dedicate their entire lives and careers to just hearing what folks say and then pulling the data or the research or the fact that kind of either supports it or doesn't. So I think doing some extra digging, unfortunately, is part of our own responsibilities at this point, since, information and ideas are so easily shared and spread through lots of different, networks online, especially. So I think it requires a little bit more work on our end. And you can view that work as part of media literacy, as like, I hear this message, it makes me, it rubs me the wrong way, or it makes me question, or it feels kind of weird. So let me do a little bit of additional research. Let me Google it. Let me learn about this. Let me find an article that I, respect and think is valid, and let me get some more information from that. I think that is a good way to do it.
And just like what you talked about, like finding different ones and like comparing and contrasting, and then hearing the things that are fact versus what is just someone's opinion or someone's analysis of it. And again, getting back to Empirical Ladder, that's what we're all kind of doing once we get this information. It's like we're sensing it, we're understanding it, trying to comprehend, figure it out, applying it to us or reflecting it, and then doing some kind of action. And so I think, with all the plethora of media, just keep a skeptical ear and try to find out as much information as possible, but not to the point where you feel overwhelmed, because I think that's counterproductive. I know Sarah had just popped in evidence-based sources as well, which yes, and I think it's just really important to understand, kind of like what the definition kind of talks to. It's not just the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media. It's like literally taking into account like where this media is coming from. And I think that's the really important analysis and reflective part, because we all have different identities with different histories, different cultures, which all hold different powers and privileges. And so it's just really important to figure out what all of these media sources feel like impact you, which kind of leads us into our next question. But taking all of these things in, and this is just a little toe dip into media literacy. It's a whole universe if you're into it. So I highly suggest and encourage you all to find out even more information on how you can equip yourself to become more media literate. But in the midst of all of this, how are you all self-caring from the impacts of what media is doing, especially with COVID-19 happening? So I'd be really interested to hear if you all are willing to share how you're taking care of yourselves. I know for me personally, I just cut it off. I try to like stop looking at any type of screen, literally. When I feel myself getting to a certain angst or anxiety about just all the things going on, especially if I can't pinpoint it, that's how I know I'm just very overwhelmed and inundated. And so my self-care is to literally unplug, even though it feels a little uncomfortable sometimes, but I think it's just my millennial nature. So what do you all do for self-caring? I know oftentimes I also post. I like to post my own medias, which again, some of it could be perpetuating bad or harm. But I think it's to a certain level, because I feel like I've done a lot of work to figure out like what my threshold is. But I feel like I like to generate and produce media and art. So,
Yeah, I've started trying to tune into some international news sources. I'm a very avid news reader, follower, so I'm trying to distance a little bit from US and look into other countries that are actually starting to recover a little bit from this, and there's a little bit of hope kind of in some of those other places. So that's been something helpful for me, kind of limiting my news consumption in the morning for about an hour or so. I'm trying to tune into some other networks that are more international, so I can kind of see what's going on in the global, right? Because I think in the US right now we're kind of in the thick of things.
I think that's great. And it yeah, I mean, we're known to be very American centric over here. So yeah, to know that we're not only just living in America, but we're on a whole planet full of other people and countries.
Yeah, it
That
makes
are
me feel less alone.
great media too.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I know Sarah offered to limit screen time, and when they're not on social media, they're following motivational and positive accounts. All right, so
I
injecting
love
some
that.
positivity and some optimism definitely needed, maybe to reframe the mind. So great.
Yeah, because these messages we consume impact us, whether we're aware or not. Like, we might not necessarily look at that beer bottle, from Bud Light and think, oh, I'm going to remove no from my vocabulary, but it is impacting maybe the way that we interpret certain situations. And so it can be unconscious or conscious, right? And so I like that idea of, surrounding yourself with motivational and positive thoughts and ideas, because you're absorbing that too, right? And you're applying that to your life. It's cool. And then Charlie's saying,
right.
turn it off, stay physical. It's very exhausting. Yeah. Yep.
Read, yeah, that is exhausting. Even trying to self-care is exhausting.
Absolutely.
And then Sarah offered us a reminder that there are positive media messages and outlets too.
Absolutely.
Which I think is probably the most important part of being media literate, because then you're able to curate and create your own media that has not came through like all of these systems that may work for us and may not. Usually it don't work for a lot of us, but that's the power in being able to push out your own and curate and create your own types of media, which is what I would highly encourage all of us to do. Because there's power in representation, there's power in understanding stories that we haven't necessarily been told all the time. To recognize bias, the only way to do that is if you tell your actual difference in story, like your story. And so I really do hope all of you continue to do your best work in terms of, staying skeptical, continue to become aware. What is it? Aware, analyze, reflect, and action. Do all those things. Go up and down that ladder all the time. But most importantly, make sure that you do become aware of how you can self-care, because it's not going to stop. Like even after COVID, we're still going to be inundated. But the more that you can create better media, I feel like the better we're all going to be. And so we may have more media literacy sessions coming up. So stay tuned for that, and to make sure you stick with us on our social medias, which is UNC Healthy Heals on all forms. And so lastly, we have some campus resources for you to be able to access. There's counseling and psychological services, campus rec, student wellness, and UNC career services. Even though, yeah, we're socially distanced right now, but you can still contact them as they are accessible. And that's it. So I hope this was helpful for you all. I hope it's some good information, and I encourage you again to continue seeking and being media literate. Otherwise, I feel like that's everything. So we can kind of stick around for a little bit more if there's any lasting questions, but otherwise, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, and as Sarah says in the chat, we love feedback. We've been doing a few of these sessions this month. We hope to continue to do them throughout the summer, but we really want to make sure the content is something that's relevant for y'all and that resonates with you. So we love your feedback. If you are interested, just privately message Sarah Fitzgerald on the chat, give her your email, and then we can send you a quick assessment so we can get some of your thoughts and feedback.
But otherwise, thank you so much. And thank you, Vivian.
Yeah, thanks, Caress. Always love chatting with you.
Yes.
We can stick around here for a little bit, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, just think about all of the things that I consume on a daily basis.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And some of it is just so funny. Like, who was really thinking of half of this stuff? That's what it cracks me up.
Well, you see now, especially, people have a lot of spare time on their hands to develop a lot of interesting memes and videos and content. And it's fun. I mean, some of it is uplifting, and I think is what we need during this time. So